How's it going, Simon?
Hey, Will, how are you doing?
Good, good. Yep. So we're back with more collaborations, huh?
I'm here, so we must be, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's what we're doing this time. Do a little live input with Kyma and this guy.
Yeah, which I'm told is a sound urchin, and I believe I will accidentally call a sea urchin a whole bunch of times. But
Yeah, yeah.
can you tell me a little bit about that?
So you can see relative to the size of my hand, it's a stomp box enclosure, a distant relative of the kalimba. So we've got, I don't know, dozens of tines here, and they're all pretty closely related in frequency, which is kind of cool because you get a lot of beating. And it's a standard Boss style center pin negative, and I've just got it on a battery snap here, which is
Mhm.
kind of cool, a little more portable. And then it's a contact mic, and there's surely some sort of amplification because this thing is super hot on the output. Like when I plug it into Kyma, I don't even turn the gain up. And as we're gonna see,
So
it's
you're just going into your the interface for Kima and
just just straight in over instrument cable directly out of this. There's a 1/4 inch output, and I just go straight into the interface, Kyma input one, and no gain. And I think, yeah, okay. No, I didn't have the pad on, but nevertheless, usually some gain is necessary. And with this thing, it's like totally not. So it's super hot output. A lot of fun though. I think it's really rich in content for Kyma. So
so what are we gonna do?
I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna do a lot of circumstantial things like amplitude following, triggering certain things, capture the live input, record it into RAM, so the memory writer, and then we've been on a ring mod kick for a while, haven't we? With in the Eurorack world, so ring modulation, and of course granulation. Something Kyma's just granulating live input is glorious. So all that in a .kym file, and then I'll get it over to you, and you can
I'm gonna
hear it, and
figure
I'll
out
also
what
give
I
you
do to it, right?
exactly, and I'll give you a little recording as well. So because you
And
don't
then
have,
I'm gonna send it back to you
yep,
because I don't have one of these sound urchins, and you're gonna do an improvisation, a jam.
yeah, I'll do a final live performance. Sure, check
All
out
right,
the thing
that's
up.
really exciting.
Yeah, I think that's about it. We'll see the process from scratch, and it's always iterative for me. Figure it out a little bit on the fly, flesh out some ideas, make some changes, and see what happens.
Sounds good to me.
All right, let's go for it.
All right.
All right, everyone, this is my part of the patch, and I'm gonna show you what it sounds like, and then I'll show you how to build it from scratch. Right on. So let's take a look at this. We've got input channel 1, which is where everything starts, which is what's coming from the sound urchin here. I've got it plugged in just via normal instrument cable directly into input 1 on Kyma. You can see it there. And then it goes out for some granulation. I'm writing it into a wavetable, which is being referenced by this oscillator. Bit of ring modulation here, and things being modulated and triggered by an amplitude follower on the Urchin as well. So let's take a look at how to build this from scratch. As I say, start with input channel 1, so Command B. There it is. It's input channel 1. Just to show you, it's coming out 1 and 2. So the same signal is being sent to both the left and right channels. Next is some granular reverb. Granular reverb stereo. And take this directly from the prototype strip, plunk it on the line. If I option click this black dot, we can see the whole flow. And here we see that input channel 1 is now going left, right, being written into RAM on the Bakarana, and then referenced here in the sample clouds, left recording, right recording, and then coming out. I'm going to get all the groundwork of the sound and then go back and make some changes. So for now, I'm going to leave it how it is. I'm going to grab our ring mod, which use product. So Command B, product. There it is. And this mixer here, I can just drag and drop this. Double click the white space so we can see the flow. I don't want this filtered noise to formants part of this sound, so I'll drag input channel 1 into here, highlight filtered noise to formants, backspace, delete it, double click here to update. Now we have input channel 1 and our oscillator. This is a sine wave, so for clarity's sake I'll rename it. Great. And then press enter and change this to ring mod. Next is another oscillator. Go back into my mixer here. I'm going to drag this in. Double click on the white to update it. There it is. And this is going to be a wavetable, not sine, but one that's live, changing from recorded input from the sound Urchin. So that means I need to get a memory writer. Go back to my mixer and I'll drag this in here. There it is. Do a little resizing here. Right, see the whole flow. I don't want generic source there, so I'll put input channel 1, drag it in. There we go. And let's see, next is amplitude follower. Oop. Open this up. I actually only want this guy right here, so we can Command C, and then I'll put it right into here for now. I'm going to use the same one, same amplitude following for multiple parts of the sound. Envelope, I'm going to put at 1, no attenuation. Frequency, I'm going to Command V and just paste that right in there. And then we'll take left part, the signal, and I want to take this control signal, which is sub audio, as we could see over here. That's what this icon means, and we want to put it into hertz. So what this signal to hertz does is takes that control signal, puts it into the range of 0 to half the sample rate, so much wider frequency. Great. Then I'll double click and we'll see amplitude follower there. And again, I want to take my input channel 1, drag it in here. And so now I'm amplitude follower of input channel 1 going into this oscillator. Cool. And now I'll do this amplitude following in a few more places. In my ring mod, I want it changing my sine frequency. So envelope, I'll leave it 1. Grab this guy again, Command C. I'll put it into here. Use the same trick, signal to hertz. So the frequency of the sine wave is being modulated by the amplitude of the sound urchin. Okay. Also had amplitude follower triggering the writing of the wavetable. So I'm going to call this recording wavetable. Capture duration is going to be 4,096 samples, because that's the standard wavetable length in Kyma. And its trigger is going to be this guy again, so it can continuously keep writing. Cyclic, and this wavetable is going to be simultaneously read in this oscillator. So there's my settings. Double click to update it, and now we see the amplitude follower going into here as well. I'll rename this wavetable. In fact, I'll call it write wavetable. And then in here, wavetable. Okay, now I want to make sure that the name of my wavetable is exactly what's here. So recording name wavetable, and it's from a memory writer. So click that. Great. Now we'll go over to the reverb cloud, the sample cloud. And freak jitter, yes, please. This random deviation around the sample, the recording, which is coming from the Urchin here, is going to add some variety. So again, I'll do this with this same amplitude follower. Freak jitter is in the range of 0 to 1, so it's maximum if I just put 1 there, as much frequency jitter as possible, but then I'm subtracting the amplitude, the performance. So the harder I hit this, the larger the amplitude, means less frequency jitter, littler amplitude, wide frequency jitter. And that's just on the left part. I'll change my grain duration for the granular synthesis as well. I'll do this same amplitude follower, but I'm going to multiply it by 5. So we can have long grain durations when there's a high amplitude, up to 5 seconds. And then we need to change our interpolation to linear because we are changing, we have freak jitter. And the right will be similar, but we're going to make a few differences from the left. So we'll do the opposite. Instead of 1 minus the amplitude follower, we'll just put the value from the amplitude follower in the freak jitter on the right side. And then we'll put linear here. Still do the same for the grain duration. Right, and we're getting close. Let's hear it. In fact, I'm going to change this to sound urchin. Let's hear how it is. Here's the VCS. So we should be able to hear with littler amplitude values, shorter grain durations, bigger amplitude values, longer grain durations. We can also hear, because for our sine wave, that the larger the amplitude, the higher the frequency. And hear it going down as this decays. So that's sounding pretty good. There's one other thing I did in the original we heard, which is here in the frequency parameter field of the wavetable. Just for a little more variety, I'm going to do this. I'll explain it here in a second. Alright, so remember we have this amplitude signal to hertz, which changes it to the range of 0 to half the sample rate. And then we're going to add this expression. And we're taking that same amplitude follower signal, but then I'm putting S there, so we're changing it to a duration in seconds. So up to 1 second, between 0 and 1 seconds. And then that's generating a random number between -1 and 1. And I'm multiplying that times 1,000. So all that's to say we're going to either subtract up to 1,000 or add up to 1,000 hertz to the frequency from here. Let's hear how that affects the sound. Of course, I can play with some of these parameters that we left in Cappy Talk over here, like direct, also density of the grain cloud. Right, amp is in the amplitude follower here, which attenuates the input signal. So for example, if I go to 0, we're now not doing, nothing's coming out of this amplitude follower, so we'll still get some sound through the granulation. Notice what happens when we go up. Cool. Now you also might notice when I talk, or when I seemingly not playing this, it's because, remember, there's a contact mic in there, super high output, so even as I'm typing, it picks up those vibrations. So there's a lot to be considered for what's going in here. Right on. Now there's one final thing to do to get this over to Simon, and that's to swap out a little something. Actually, what I want to do is make a new sound file. Right, and this is good how it is, so I'll just take and plunk it in there. But Simon doesn't have one of these yet, and we want him to have that input so that he can work on it. So I'm going to do something, a neat little trick we talked about, generic source live. And I can take this and plunk it to replace here. Okay, and now this will allow me to leave my sources live. So if I play this, shouldn't be any change. Right. Or if I come in here and I go to RAM and give a sample, which I have here, This is a dry performance. Just recorded this output with no processing, and I put it in here. Now, if I play it, cool. So now Simon has that, oh, it's a minute or so. Yeah, 67 seconds. Some different variety, because you heard like when I'm playing metal on here, or fingers or mallets, the sound is different. So I gave him a little variety there. So now I'll take this one, rename it to Sound Urchin Live or Disc Source. Take that, put it into this. Can lose this, and I'll save this as Sound Urchin. Keep everything in my own Kyma library here. Sound files, Sound Urchin. And that's it. So I'm going to give this .kym to Simon along with the disc recording I showed you. He'll be able to open this up on his system and do his thing. And once we do that, we'll do a final performance with everything. Send it over to Simon now.
Okay, hey y'all, this is Simon. I have just gotten the files from Will, and I've just watched the video that y'all just watched. And I love this exciting, chaotic sound that Will's put together. My thinking is I don't have much to add to this sound in terms of dimension, but what I'd really like to do is really bring in my expertise in making this sound as great as possible. And how I'm going to approach that is basically thinking about the frequency space today. I'm going to work with a bunch of filters just to really try to bring out the sound to be the best it can be. Now, just to talk a little bit about myself, I spent a ton of time working entirely on fixed media pieces before I moved into live performance of electronic music. And one of the things that was really important to me when I moved into this live performance was to not forget the elements of polish and the level of detail that I was able to bring into fixed media pieces. Now, of course, a lot of that can be controlled in our live performance, but there are things that we can do in building our instruments and building our software that can make it way easier for us to sound great. So as a first step, I took the raw audio that Will sent, and I wanted to see it run through a spectrum analyzer. Check this out. So a lot of stuff around 100 hertz. That's a lot of low frequencies in there. Ah, you see that? That big boom. Boy, there was some, oh, right there. There's some sub audio in that. Well, maybe it's not sub audio, but we have a lot of low frequencies in there that maybe we don't want. So again, this is the raw recording. This is before it's processed. So anytime that I'm working with live instruments, I'm thinking about this and how, if I'm processing this instrument, I can isolate the parts of the instrument that I just want. So this Sound Urchin is a complex little thing, and we want to bring in all of the sound of it we can. But I'm going to argue that nothing under 40 hertz is going to be useful for us here. Let me take this a step further. I asked Will to send me the processed recording of this sound. So here, check this out. Here's what it looks like processed. And once again, we can see a lot of low frequencies in there. Low frequencies are great, but we have to respect the low frequency range, or else we're going to get muddy sounds real fast. Also worth noting, this Sound Urchin tends to resonate around 200 hertz a lot. And that's good to know. And it's good for us to think about the other sounds, the sounds that aren't the original sea urchin. Can we scoop out around 200 to let this I'm going to keep saying sea urchin, but to let this Sound Urchin really breathe in there. So let's pull up the Kyma. Playing this, making sure I got sound. All right. One other thing I want to point out is we're getting clipping here. And so that's worth us thinking about how we can make sure that we avoid that too. All right. Let's start from the top here. What I'm actually going to do is let me start with just bringing in a filter. And I'm going to do this in a weird way, but this is to prevent me from having to do wires. So I replace that generic source, and then I'm going to bring it back. I just didn't want to have to drop the filter in one wire and then reconnect all these things. Let's get this back to be our sample that we want. Make sure that's right. Okay, that seems good. All right, so now what I want to do is I want this filter to be a utility to take out sub audio from the live performance. Now, again, I'm doing it from this generic source mono disc, but Will's going to perform this live. So let's take this filter. I want it to be a high pass filter because I'm trying to take out sub audio. I'm going to set the frequency to be 40. Again, 20 is sub audio, but there was a talk by Scott Wyatt that I went to where he said, you really don't need anything under 40 hertz. And so I took him at his word there. Again, this is the input to make sure we're cleaning up this sound. Scale and Q, I'll leave feedback. I don't want any feedback, right? Because this is just for rolling off sounds. And then order, this is how many poles. Let's make it a 2-pole filter. That choice is kind of arbitrary, but the higher the order of the filter, the more distortion of your low frequencies you have. And so making it a 2-pole filter is 12 decibels per octave. It's sort of a nice balance between rolling it off enough, but also maybe not damaging that low end. Let's play from this filter now. And from the generic source mono disc. Now, my hope is actually that we don't hear any difference between those two, because I don't want to take out sound that we want to hear. I just want to take out sound that's going to cause problems when I process it. I'm going to jump over my generic source mono disc and set my frequency to just be default here, by the way, because we don't need that rate knob coming up. Okay, so I think that alone will help clean things up a whole lot, but let's do a couple other things. One thing I noticed was that this wavetable isn't silent and these wavetables aren't silent. That might be part of what's leading to that clipping. I'm going to make these two silent. I'll talk a little bit why I made that decision in just a second. Okay, let's listen to the ring mod then. Okay, that's a great sound. But once again, we need to recognize that what a ring modulator is doing is it's taking the carrier and then it creates a frequency above and below based off of the modulation frequency. So this, once again, has a ton of potential to be creating sub audio for us. So I'm going to, again, Command B, filter, mink. There's my filter in there. Once again, no resonance. To make it 40 hertz. Make sure that it's high pass, right? Play again. Yeah, that's definitely clipping there. We'll deal with the clipping in a second, but what we have here now, we're taking out those sub audio frequencies, those low frequencies. I believe Kyma will happily alias. I don't remember, but I don't really care about that. I'll consider the aliasing part of the sound. But since the sub audio, again, just low frequencies that are doing nothing for us, it's not going to be a big help. Now, let's actually just do the exact same thing after our wavetable. Keep in mind, he's got this L signal to hertz here, and I just want to make sure that when that's outside of the range of human hearing, we're getting it out. Now, I would note that if this were, my piece that I were working on, I were continuing to refine, I might mess around with this numbers, not have them all be 40. I might decide that some of these components need to only live above 80, only above 200. Again, bass frequencies are wonderful, but we don't want to crowd bass frequencies because then we can end up with phase problems. We can end up with sub audio as we're seeing here. And it actually will make our bass sound bigger the more care we take in these bass sounds. Now I'm going to, because I'm going to be a bit more extreme here. Let's take those and, unsurprisingly, let's filter them, but let's do a couple things here. I'm going to add 2 filters, bink, bink. This is going to be my high pass filter, and this is going to be my low pass filter. By the way, I just split that to left and right because they were actually from the same thing. Right? They're coming from a mono source anyway, so I'm just cleaning up my flow here a little bit. High pass filter. Let's be more extreme here. Let's do 600 hertz. So again, we're sending this to the buffer. Let's filter this buffer even more just to help clean up that sub audio a little bit more. This is my high pass. Oh, by the way, I made a mistake. That one needs to be high pass. Glad I caught that. This one is my low pass. Let's set this one to be about 2000 hertz. No resonance. And I'm just going to make this a 1-pole, 6 decibels per octave filter. Let's listen to that. Much tighter spectrum on that. Why is that still clipping there? Give me a moment here. Okay, I think I need to go to this generic source, and let me turn this down a bit. Let me turn my scale down to 0.5, and let's see if that does us better here. Much quieter. Okay. All right. 600 hertz. High pass. So again, significant change in those low frequencies. Low pass, 2000 hertz, rolling off with a lower order filter. I'm tempted to go even more severe on these. Let me just see what happens if I do 4 here. Okay, I don't hate that. All right, so we filtered now in the signal that's going in to be granulated here. And again, I've turned off sound from these. I've turned them to be silent. So actually this left direct and right direct aren't doing anything, right? Because I stopped those from passing in because the raw sound is being passed in here because this one. Okay, so we've got some filtering here. Once again, he's messing with the frequency jitter here. So we could consider if we want to filter what's coming out of these clouds. Let's listen to what we've got here for now. Okay, I've still got a lot of clipping going on here. Again, this will be shaped through performance. Basically, I've turned this way down. I'm not completely sure why it needed to be turned down that much, but he does have quite a few things going on here. I believe this should just loop through our sounds, yeah? So once again, we take the input, we filter it. Again, this is going to be a live input when he's playing, and he can definitely keep an eye on his clipping there in the same way that I've just turned this down. So he'll replace that with his live input there. And then, so that live input I filter just so I'm getting out the sub audio, I'm getting out some things that I don't want before I pass it to the amplitude follower, which is just checking the amplitude, but I'm taking, once again, the sound from his wavetable synth that he's made, filtering that out, once again, to get the sub audio that might have occurred from this frequency conversion that's going on here. This is wavetable. This is recording for that wavetable synth, but this is also our direct sound. I'm not doing any more filtering on that because I've got the filter here. And then once again, the ring mod, just because the frequency changes based on this amplitude modulation, because of that, I want to make sure I'm not getting any sub audio in my sound here either. These are the grain clouds. I mean, we could do some filtering after these. We could even do some severe filtering after these. This would be more aesthetic than anything else, right? The issue with this, though, of course, is I'd need stereo filters because the grain clouds are stereo. Bink, boop, bink, boop. Let's collapse that and show it again. It's messy, but we'll get it. Here's my low pass filter. Oh, but I did low pass. I should have done high pass. That's okay. Doesn't matter. 600, level 1, resonance 0, order 2. This will just clear up a little bit of bottom of that reverb. Not really reverb, but granulation sound. It gives the sound urchin more space to live there. Honestly, you know, I kind of want to do the same here. 600 for this friend. And let's do 600 for the ring mod as well. So that way that 200 hertz that rings out there. That's nice. Again, this sound urchin really sounds like it's resonating a lot at that 200 hertz. And so we don't need all of the reverb and everything else supporting that. We can scoop out some of that space. Again, I will not be offended if Will thinks I've taken too much away and he wants to add some of this back in. But the way I've got it now set up is the only thing that's living in my bass frequencies is my original sound, his live sound. And then it lets us, in these other parts, create something more. You know, if I wanted to be wild about it, I might give this friend back the bass while leaving the others out of the way. Now, let's keep in mind, Will actually originally had all these wavetables not sent to silent, and so he had more of the direct sound. He might miss some of that direct sound. Let's take a mixer, dump it in here, and this is going to be the affected sound, right? And so you can see what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to take all of these ones that are the affected sound. We don't need this sample cloud. So there's the wavetable, ring mod, low pass filter stereo. These are the granulated ones, bink. These aren't making any sound. This is my direct. And then we can make a effect volume. I mean, really, it should be effect amp. Copy, paste. I do this the old-fashioned way. I know you can now update flow, but this is my habit. Oh, and then I need to get rid of them from here. See ya. See you later. Goodbye. Laters. Okay, let me do this. There. Still better do it my way. Okay, this is messy, but There's my affected sound. These don't make sound. So now when I play this on my panel, now I have an effect amp. I can turn all the way down. Just my dry sound. Turn up the effect. All right. And now he can set that how he wants to. If it were me, I would probably simplify this control panel, this VCS. He's going to be playing the sound Urchin, right? So I would probably take away any sliders that I don't need. So he could probably choose his slew rate and set that not as a variable, but as a constant in there. But anyway, I'm going to kick this back to Will, and we'll see what he comes up with.
Great stuff, Simon. Thanks for that. I'm going to provide some closing thoughts and then do a final performance. I think we're really close here. Just want to do a bit of housekeeping. This is the sound file that I sent to Simon, and this is the one that I got back from him. You notice they look the same, but if we go in here, this one is pre-Simon's work, and this one here is post Simon's work with all the filtering that he did. I'm going to rename this one filtered, and then I'm going to drag and drop it into this sound file. I can lose this now, and now we can just keep all our iterations together. And let's just hear these again, remind ourselves, quick A/B comparison. So I'll go back in here, switch this to live. This is mine before Simon did any work. Let's hear it after Simon's filtering. We're still referencing his recording in here, my recording of the performance of the Urchin. Let's switch this back to live. Right on. And as Simon pointed out, there's definitely a fair bit of clipping, which I had noticed as well. Admittedly, I've been on a noisy streak for quite a while, so I didn't actually find it to be offensive or too abrasive, at least from an aesthetic standpoint. Now, technically speaking, of course, it was clipping. So a couple things we can do. Simon addressed some of those issues, but we can just maybe put the pad on the preamp here, because the output from the Urchin is extremely hot, so it might help just attenuate that before it even gets into Kyma. And then we'll play around with a little bit of this, and then Simon also mentioned a good point, which is it can be refined during the performance. I can be more aware of this as I play, which I will shoot to do that. So with that, let's start to think about how we can clean this VCS up. We've got slew rate, which I'm certainly not going to change on the fly. Reverbs are at half. Probably not going to change that on the fly. Effect amp. Really, all of these can probably become constant, so we don't even need a VCS, which is good because I have nothing. I wouldn't want to play with my mouse while doing this. Instead, I just want to be solely focused on the performance of the Urchin. So let's go inside here and find these variables. Right now here's slew rate was at 0.97, so I can really just put this in. We're doing some unnecessary subtraction here, but just so you can see how you can swap in a constant for that Capitalk variable there. I'll change it to 0.97. Scale, we've got this hot variable amp, which was going to be at 1, so we'll make that a changed from a variable to a constant. The reverbs were here. If we make reverb L1, we're multiplying this expression by 1. We know that anything multiplied by 1 is itself, so we can honestly just lose that. And same thing here on the right side. Great. And what else was in the amp? We did reverb still great. So density and effect amp. Density is in the sample clouds as well. Density. What to do with density? Let's take this same amplitude follower. That'll output a number that could be useful here. Density, I believe, goes from the range of 0 to 1. If I copy, paste the amplitude follower, larger amplitude values mean more dense of a cloud. Let's try it. We'll do that same thing for the right. And then the affected sound, effect amp. Let's leave it a variable just for the moment. So we should only have that in our VCS. And we do. I'll just turn it all the way up. So just putting the pad on the preamp seemed to help a lot with the clipping, and then of course Simon's filtering out some of the sounds. I had a lot of dry sound coming through. That's been mitigated, and so now we're in a better place. What is going through there and what clipping might happen from an aggressive or really loud moment, I'm gonna be subversive and just let that happen. I think it's good to have a healthy dose of that, and this isn't exactly the most clearly defined non-noisy sound you could make. It's quite the opposite, really. So see if we can get away with it. That said, the technical talk was super awesome, super useful. I think it's good to have a good distribution of technical awareness and a subversive mindset, which I think we've accomplished on this particular sound. Let's just make effect amp a 1. Just let it ride, and I'll just double check I've got things that mostly make sense here. Yeah, let's check this out. So notice no VCS. Right on. So I think there's always room for refinement, there's always room for changes, but I'm enjoying the way this sounds. So let's let this version live as it is and just do a few minutes of a performance with the Urchin and some of these different metal objects. Got a tuning fork, a couple of mallets, a bow that was designed for acoustic guitar specifically, so that it can actually go between the strings and into the sound hole. Today it will be on the Sound Urchin. And with that, let's just let it rip here and have some fun.